The story of America's independence begins not on the battlefield, but in the minds of people who believed in freedom. Long before July 4th, 1776, tensions had been building between the American colonies and Great Britain. The colonies had grown used to managing their own affairs. But now, King George III and Parliament were tightening their grip. New taxes were introduced without giving the colonies a voice. The result? Anger, frustration, and a movement that would change history forever. The Stamp Act of 1765 was one of the first sparks. It required colonists to buy special paper for newspapers, legal documents, and licenses. But it wasn't just about money. It was about control. No taxation without representation became a rallying cry. Colonists believed they shouldn't be taxed by a government across the ocean that didn't represent them. Tensions kept rising. The Boston Massacre in 1770 added fuel to the fire. British soldiers shot and killed 5 colonists during a protest. Then came the Boston Tea Party in 1773. Angry about a tea tax, members of the Sons of Liberty dumped an entire shipment of British tea into the harbor. The British government responded with harsh punishments, closing Boston's port and stripping away self-rule in Massachusetts. In 1774, representatives from the colonies gathered in Philadelphia at the First Continental Congress. They wanted to find a peaceful solution, but they also began preparing for the worst. A year later, in April 1775, the first shots were fired at Lexington and Concord. The American Revolution had begun. But what were they fighting for? At first, many colonists hoped for reconciliation, not independence. They wanted their rights as British subjects, not a break from the king. That began to change with the arrival of a powerful little book, Common Sense, by Thomas Paine. Published in January 1776, Common Sense made a bold argument. It was not only possible for the colonies to govern themselves, it was necessary. Paine called the monarchy an outdated system, and claimed that America had a moral obligation to break free. The book sold over 100,000 copies in just a few months. Suddenly, the idea of independence wasn't radical. It was popular. With public opinion shifting, leaders in the Continental Congress began drafting a statement that would declare the colonies free from British rule. They turned to a young Virginian named Thomas Jefferson to put their ideas into words. Jefferson, just 33 years old, wrote a document that would become one of the most powerful statements of human freedom ever written. In it, he wrote that all men are created equal and have unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These weren't just nice ideas. They were a direct challenge to monarchy and oppression. The Declaration of Independence also listed the colonists' grievances against King George III, how he ignored their rights, dissolved their legislatures, and sent armies against them. It painted the king not as a leader, but as a tyrant. It was a bold move, and it meant war. On July 2nd, 1776, the Continental Congress voted in favor of independence. 2 days later, on July 4th, they approved the final text of the Declaration. That's the date we celebrate, but independence didn't come with fireworks. It came with sacrifice. The men who signed the Declaration knew they were risking everything. They were committing treason against the British crown. If they lost, they could be executed. But they signed anyway, 56 of them from all 13 colonies. Farmers, lawyers, merchants, and even a printer. They pledged their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor. News of the Declaration spread quickly. It was read aloud in town squares and printed in newspapers. For the first time, people began to truly see themselves not as British colonists, but as Americans. But independence was just the beginning. The Revolutionary War would rage on for years. Thousands would die, cities would burn, families would be divided. But now, The cause was clear, and so was the message to the world. America was no longer part of an empire. It was a new nation. The Declaration of Independence wasn't just a break from Britain. It was a blueprint for what America hoped to become, a land of freedom and equality. And while the reality would fall short for many, especially enslaved people and women, the document laid the foundation for future change. Over the centuries, people around the world would draw inspiration from the Declaration, from revolutionaries, in France to civil rights leaders in the U.S. Its words still echo today, reminding us of the courage it took to speak them and the vision of a nation built on liberty. The story of America's independence isn't just about battles and politics. It's about an idea that people have the right to govern themselves, that power belongs to the people, and that freedom is worth fighting for. In the end, the Declaration of Independence didn't just declare a separation from Britain. It declared the birth of something new, the United States of America, a nation that would struggle, grow, and continue striving to live up to the powerful ideals written in that summer of 1776.